Let's talk to Trevor Kavanagh now. He's the former political editor of the Sun newspaper and joins us to talk about, where we are on international and domestic affairs. Very good morning to you.
Good morning, Julia.
Thank you very much indeed. Look, we had this announcement yesterday for the Prime Minister, a rather sort of pompous press conference after he held his emergency cabinet meeting yesterday. And he announced that the UK, basically will be recognising the state of Palestine. They'd be the second G7 nation to do so after France, but along with another. Huge number of countries have already recognised the state of Palestine. But many people are pointing out that not just the criticism from Israel and the US, but that this is far more about domestic politics than it is about actually anything that would help a single child in Gaza to get food or bring about any chance of peace.
Yes, this is the absolute definition of gesture politics. It's not going to happen. It will not happen. And if it did happen, it would be a disaster both for the Palestinians and for Israel. But you're right. I think that Keir Starmer is running scared. He's running scared from his left wing and from the Muslim voters upon whom he relies for quite a lot of Labour seats. So, and the thing is, as your caller Colin mentioned only a few moments ago, I think a well-informed viewer and listener, this has been tried many times in the past through very careful negotiations at the highest level involving the presidents of the United States. And every single Palestinian leader from Yasser Arafat onwards has refused point blank to go down that route when they get to the crunch. They don't want it. They regard the Palestinian people as their pawns, their propaganda weapon, and the sight of Palestinians being shot, bombed or starved is grist to their mill.
What do you make of a lot of the footage that's coming up? Because it's really interesting. Keir Starmer mentioned this of Heidi Alexander, the Transport Secretary, who's been out defending the policy today, and again asked by every single interviewer. So the conditions are on Israel to agree to a ceasefire, to let in more aid and the like. And if they don't do that, then the Palestinian state would be recognised. It's interesting that those conditions are only on Israel, but there are no conditions on Hamas. They said, oh yes, we do expect Hamas to release the hostages and agree to ceasefire, except they will have no role in a future Palestinian state. There's no sign of them doing any of those three things, and they're not conditions of the recognition of a Palestinian state extraordinarily. But what do you make of this decision at this time, and why Keir Starmer is so beholden to his left wing when he's got a massive majority? He's got more than 400 MPs, and so beholden to the effectively, the Gaza vote.
Well, it's almost, isn't it, as if October the 7th never happened. Yeah. And somehow or other it's Israel's fault that 1,200 innocent young people.
There are literally people who think that.
Yes, there are. They've forgotten it, really. And in any case, Israel is to blame. It's their fault for stoking the attitudes that led to that atrocity. And this is the strangest thing about the whole Labour Party stance on this. There is no way that you can justify the idea of handing a chunk of Gaza over to an actual Palestinian state, which would not have a relationship with the next door neighbour. And indeed, we had a very interesting article in the Sun today from a former Labour MP who has actually been campaigning for a two-state solution, but points out very accurately that it's the wrong time to even consider such a thing. While you've got effectively a war in progress, you're not going to have a peaceful relationship between the two sides.
No, exactly. Well, how much do you think this has actually been directed by the media coverage? Because Heidi Alexander, the Transport Secretary, and the Prime Minister and others constantly citing, and Donald Trump as well in that press conference in Scotland, constantly citing the images. We don't want to see these images of emaciated children. We don't want to see these images of hunger. As if it's, how the West feels that's the issue as opposed to reality. As in, if we don't see it, then it doesn't really bother us, which is sadly the truth, because we're not bothered about what happens in Yemen or Sudan, because it's not on our TV screens, it's not on our social media feeds day in, day out at all. But actually an awful lot of that footage is complete and utter propaganda. The Express at the weekend had a picture of a child as the image of, terrible image of an emaciated child. The child isn't even in Gaza. The child has been in Italy for a couple of months, where it's being treated for a congenital health problem, which is why it's so terribly skinny. I mean, so much of what this is being based on is actual downright lies.
Well, it's worse than that, because the people who are suffering in this ghastly situation, the children and the mothers who are clearly hungry, some of them in a serious state, they are the victims of Hamas, not Israel.
Yeah.
Hamas is stealing the food and even punishing Palestinians who try to get hold of it. And all of this is being ignored, as far as I can see, by the mainstream media, apart from one or two newspapers who are giving the full picture. But this is manipulation. But it's the people who are being manipulated, the Labour Party and some of the other countries who are signing up to this call for a new state for Palestine, are simply ignoring the facts on the ground and falling for the propaganda because they want to believe it.
Yeah.
There is an anti-Israel view which emanates at the very top and widespread across the United Nations now.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. And certainly widespread across the left wing of this country as well. Let's talk about domestic issues, because Kemi Badenoch actually, pointed out in her tweet criticising the Prime Minister's stance on this. We've got a lot of domestic problems. Earlier in the week, we were asking our audience, should he be, chatting about Gaza with Donald Trump, although he says that he didn't, when, there's stuff back home we'd like to deal with. We've got some new stats out today about knife crime offences in London. They've nearly doubled in a decade under, guess who's been in charge of London as not just the mayor, but also the Police and Crime Commissioner for London, the man who decides where resources and policing and the priorities go, Sadiq Khan. But also that only 1 in 20 muggings in London were actually solved last year by the police. We have a crisis of crime and a failure of policing in our capital city. It's actually also, many other cities are seeing big problems as well, but it's basically off the scale in London, isn't it? What's going on?
Well, I have to say, I cheered privately when I listened to Donald Trump describing our London mayor as a nasty person. I think, frankly...
He's not a nasty person. I don't like those personal things.
No, I'm sorry. But when it comes to the governance of our capital city, he is behaving in a way which can only be described as nasty. He is allowing the capital city to be run down to the point where people are afraid as tourists to come to this to this country. I mean, shoplifting, phone crime, muggings, and stabbings. The number of shoplifting crimes has risen, as you know, to more than 500,000 in a year. And this is rampant, and it actually affects people as they watch it happening on their doorsteps. Yep. And he's turning a deaf ear and a blind eye to all of this. So I think that in terms of politics is concerned, that's nasty.
Well, OK, that's a fair point. I mean, particularly nasty. Also, we've had more details coming out about what happened with grooming gangs, particularly in Rotherham, where 5 grooming gang victims have come forward to claim they were abused not just by the grooming gangs in Rotherham, but also by police officers who were supposed to rescue them from the grooming gangs. One of them says she was raped from the age of 12 by a serving South Yorkshire police officer who threatened to hand her back to her abusers if she did not comply. And her view was, I've been abused, gang raped so many times. It was easier to be raped by him alone than to be handed back to the grooming gangs. I mean, mind-blowing stuff. Anyone who's got a daughter will feel this, in their stomach. She later claimed she was later forced into abortion when she was 15, and a social worker contacted the police, and the officer who turned up to interview her was the same one who'd been raping her, and he ripped up her statement in front of her. Others reporting police officers having sex with grooming gang victims, abusing girls who they were supposed to be helping. I'm pretty sure you've been around the block a long time, so have I. We've been covering these stories for a long time. None of this comes as a surprise to you.
It doesn't come as a surprise, but it is a total shock to think that this could be happening not just amongst the grooming gangs, but among the police officers who are supposed to be protecting us and our young children. After all, these are our kids. These are British children who are vulnerable and in care. They're supposed to be in care. And they're getting raped by the very people who are supposed to be caring for them. And the appalling thing is that what is actually happening right now, we've got promises of an inquiry, but it's taking forever. And by the time, it will not happen while this government's in office. It will be kicked into the long grass. And in the meantime, these gangs are still grooming and raping across the country.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing, it's not a historic issue. It's something that's happening today, right now, and probably on a bigger scale. And interestingly, I've been asking it for quite some time, why do we never hear about grooming gangs in London in recent weeks and months? There's been talk about actually it's on a bigger scale in London. Why wouldn't it be on a big scale in London as our capital city with 10 million people? It is extraordinary. I just want to ask you as a general query. I mean, we've got, we've just had the NHS, we've had strikes, people can't get a doctor's appointment, we've got the cost of living crisis, we've now got, rising unemployment, we've got a huge number of young people on benefits, we have the asylum hotels, we've got the grooming gang issue, rising crime. Do you think that this is all coming to a head, that we are entering some would say dangerous territory, but some might also say perhaps territory we somehow need to enter? I've spoken to a few people who've never broken the law in their lives. I mean, they might have once, speeded at 33 miles per hour. That's the extent of their criminality. And when I've said, we could be heading for dangerous territory with protests and violence on the streets, and they have all, to a man and a woman, replied, good. We need to get there. There needs to be a reckoning. Now, I would never support any violence on our streets, any criminality. We should protest peacefully. We live in a democracy, and we have the rule of law. But do you think that all of these issues are at the point now where they are coming to a head, and if they are not dealt with, we are going to be entering dangerous territory?
Well, I think you're absolutely right on all of that. The big question is the if they are not dealt with properly. While this government is in office, they will not be dealt with properly. And this is why Nigel Farage is so many points ahead in the polls right now, because he is identifying that very these are the frogs in the boiling water. Are they going to jump out and do something? Or is it too late? I tend to fear that it's too late, because the authorities, from the very big top to bottom, whether it's the police, the politicians, or the public officials in the blob who are turning a blind eye, the immigration judges who refuse to send anybody back, no matter how heinous the crimes they've committed already, how are you going to reverse that? The people will get very angry. There may well be some sort of demonstration in the streets, but they've already preempted that with this online draconian measure to stop people actually seeing these things online or on television anymore. If you haven't got an age certificate showing that you're old enough to view it, you can't even see it on Twitter or whatever you call it these days. Yeah,
again, and hence people turning to VPNs. I think we're into some very, very, very dangerous territory. But I think the country does need a reckoning, because I think we've allowed our politicians to continue doing this, even though we keep telling them this is what we want, and they keep ignoring us. And there will be a reckoning. Trevor Kavanagh, former political editor of The Sun, thank you so much for joining us. Claire Pissell, your thoughts on that?
And I think that Trevor was right when he says that the online harms bill will actually stop a lot of this, because we won't be able to see if people are protesting and what they're protesting
about.
But
often this stuff isn't on mainstream media at all anyway. I mean, I'm amazed the number of things I talked about. They go, I don't know anything about this. You think, how do you not know anything about this?
I mean, I suppose it's because we look at varying different forms of media that are available to us. I don't have a problem with looking at other stuff.
If you just watch the BBC, you're basically uninformed of what's going on in this country.
Absolutely, and it comes into YouTube, which we'll talk about later, and the rise of those kind of media sources. But you do need to be able to do that, and I do think people are going to be coming out and are very, very angry.
Absolutely. Well, indeed, there may be a political earthquake, but there may also be tsunamis after the 8.8 magnitude earthquake we saw just off the coast of Russia. Big warnings for tsunamis across the Pacific Rim.